Yo, what's up? What's up? What is going on, everybody? This is BrendanMushi, and we're coming at you with another video talking about Guilty Gear 2020. You know what it is. So everybody just watched the live stream, YouTube videos, compilations, notes of what's changed about the game, what's different, what's been kept in it. I think most people are pretty well versed in the differences between the new Guilty Gear and the older Guilty Gear games. If you watch the streams, there's plenty of videos out there explaining the differences. I didn't really want to make another video explaining all the differences when everybody already kind of knows that. I'll put some resources in the description if you're not really up to date on what's different about this new Guilty Gear title. You could check that out and get caught up. I kind of wanted to more focus on the specific things that I like about the game, what I don't like about the game so far. I know we're on like day -300, but like we're still allowed to form opinions, right? So as far as the aesthetics of the game, obviously the game looks gorgeous. That's without a doubt. The character models, the stages, my god, those intros with like the when they're like walking up on each other, it reminds me a lot of Mortal Kombat. How in Mortal Kombat it'll be one shot of both of the characters in the shot walking up together, instead of like, you know, one sequence of a character's intro and then it cuts to a completely separate sequence of another character's intro. Their intros are combined in the style of like Mortal Kombat has been doing, which looks cool. It's got that like Soul Calibur quote at the beginning. That's really dope. A lot of people are upset about the HUD, the character select screen, and I completely get that. It's not in line with the traditional Guilty Gear titles, where it's like chains and darker tones and more of a heavy metal feel, because that's, you know, that's Guilty Gear, right? The HUD looks like a placeholder to me. It clearly looks like it. The character fonts, all of that looks like it's just a placeholder for the game. I would say the character select screen, that's probably how the game's gonna look, like the menus and all that. That's pretty much how it's gonna look. I'm okay with it. I think it looks very like Nintendo-esque, you know, like it looks like the character select screen kind of looks like some Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games kind of thing, right? Or like Mario Tennis. It's got like the power rankings and stats, and I feel like they're trying to make the game simple, and I feel like it's not really necessary to include that, but like whatever, it's fine. But you can tell that that's not a placeholder because of, you know, if you look at the character art for the game, right, you'll see like the bright gold chains instead of the darker, like the bright gold gears and chains instead of like the darker tones. So it's very clear that they're going with a more brighter, colorful anime feel. And that's the direction they've been going since XX to Xrd, right? Now, in terms of like the actual gameplay, I've like looked at a lot of people's opinions on this, like a lot of commentators. I watched Kizzy's stream to like hear his thoughts. I was lurking on Twitter. I took a lot of people's opinions into account to see if anybody could kind of influence my own. And the actual like neutral game of this game looks like Guilty Gear to me. Like the way that, you know, there's still air dashes, which are really fast. There's been side-by-side comparison videos of the normals in this game, like doing like basic Gatling strings, like just air dashing and double jumping, and it's essentially the same speed like as Xrd. Like they look very identical, and it feels like Guilty Gear when you're air dashing at somebody over a fireball, going in to pressure them, and then going for a tick throw, right? The way they're jumping around the screen, and Chip's doing Alpha Blade across the screen, and Potemkin's doing Slide Head, right? It looks very similar to traditional Guilty Gear, so I don't think people are really too hung up about that. I think where people are kind of getting upset is more so once someone actually gets a hit. That's when it gets a little bit different, and it gets a little bit more like Street Fighter 5-esque, because pressure in this game is going to be a whole lot different, because you can't do traditional Gatlings in this game. For example, the weaker buttons are designed to not really Gatling in like a punch, kick, slash, heavy slash order. So instead, the punch button can't Gatling into any other button except for command normals and itself. Like you can mash 2P, 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 2P over and over again, or 5P, 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 5P over and over again. So that's really a game changer there as far as what you can do. And then also, since throws aren't you know, instant and one frame startup, and they have a whiff animation now, that also changes offense too, because you can no longer throw OS. which is where you would input a throw and a button, and if you didn't get the throw, you'd get the button. And oftentimes you would use a favorable button, like maybe something that's plus, so that way if you don't get the throw, you get a plus button and you get to keep the offense going, hence how Guilty Gear is a very offensive game. Without that, you have to make more of a commitment to the throw, and it becomes a little bit more like a Street Fighter, right, where somebody could jump out of the throw and then punish you. And speaking of Street Fighter, this game is entirely focused on the neutral game. Like when you get a hit on somebody, there's no air teching at all, which is like there's not much of an air battle, right? Because when you get hit in the air, you can't tech, you just sink to the ground, and then once you hit the ground, you tech backwards. Almost all the attacks in the game are designed to knock you full screen. Heavy attacks knock you full screen. Potemkin's Pop Buster throws you full screen. If you beat somebody up in the corner and break the wall, it resets to neutral. It's like the entire game, just everything resets to neutral. There are a few knockdowns and counter hits that will cause an actual knockdown, but obviously the game's too early to see how people would actually set up for any kind of an Oki situation. But I think that's the main things that people are hung up on, is that they're not seeing somebody do any long, difficult, or creative freeform combos into some kind of a freeform Oki setup. It seems like the game is kind of limiting you to almost like Street Fighter V, where it's like it's limiting what you can actually do offensively in terms of Oki and combos and even pressure. And I think that's what a lot of people are really, really scared of. I don't think that ArcSys will really have the ability to... I don't think there's any feedback that's going to make this game what a lot of Guilty Gear fans want it to be. I think a lot of Guilty Gear fans just want this game to be like Xrd and like XX. They want it to be a Guilty Gear game, essentially, is what they want. And I mean, they said in an interview that they were taking a different direction with the series and reconstructing the series. And so it's hard for me to believe that they're gonna say, hey guys, we're reconstructing the series, and then Guilty Gear fans are gonna say, hey, so as far as feedback, we want you to not reconstruct the series. And then they're just gonna be like, oh, okay, and then just redo with everything and just make like Guilty Gear XXXX. That's probably not gonna happen. I think they have their mind set up that this game is going to be Guilty Gear. It's still Guilty Gear, right? It still has roaming cancels, and they said there's a bunch of other hidden roaming cancels that they didn't introduce yet. The game isn't finished. Characters still don't have a lot of their special moves. So I think that a lot of the game's depth is going to center around the use of roaming cancel, and obviously we don't know what else there is to the game because we haven't played it. The game isn't like alpha, so it's really hard to say. But they said there's many different types of roaming cancels that we haven't gone over yet, and like I said, the neutral game, it still feels very much like Guilty Gear in that aspect. And one thing I was thinking of too is a lot of people were complaining about combos, but a lot of times when you watch Guilty Gear, while yes, there are a lot of opportunities for crazy combos, oftentimes just basic punch, kick, slash into down dust, like just a basic chain into sweep, is often just a B&B still used in competitive play. When Kai gets a hit, oftentimes what you do is you do a basic Gatling into baseball slide, right? And that's still prevalent in the game. Same with Soul, basic Gatling into down dust sweep, or basic Gatling into bandit revolver. And all of that's still prevalent in the game. I mean, there's still examples of Kai doing combos where he does a basic Gatling into baseball slide, roaming cancels, combos off of that with the greed sever replacement, that like overhead kick, and then wall splats them against the wall. And then once you wall splat them, you have a decision there to either let them slide down the wall and go for Oki. That is your Oki essentially. Like you have a long time to do something there to set something up. Maybe you could backdash, jump at them and make them guess with a delayed air dash, overhead, or a low, or you could land low and then dust them, and maybe because they're against the wall, instead of the dust knocking them back, you can combo off of it, and then you could just keep deciding to loop them there instead of breaking the wall, or you could break the wall to get the damage boost. Does it sound super familiar like Guilty Gear? Probably not, but again, I mean, they're making a new game, and that's just my speculation on how the game could be played. And so I think in that aspect, there definitely are elements of core Guilty Gear there, even offensively, even though that's people's main fear. I think the neutral game does play like Guilty Gear. People are just a bit concerned about the offense, because that's what Guilty Gear is known for. It's like, well, how is it? You know, it's great that you kept Guilty Gear's neutral in the Roman cancel, but you're taking out a lot of the vicious offense. And how are characters like Zato, Melia, Venom, Eno, how are these characters going to function? The thing is that all the characters in the game right now, for the most part, they don't really function like those characters, right? I mean, you could try to make a case for Mei, because like Mei does have some like dolphin setups, right? But it's not to the same degree that like Zato like will do like gets like 6 mix-ups on you. And a character like Zato completely goes against the way this game is meant to be played. So I don't think that Arxis would cut those characters from the game, right? Like, I think that's pretty absurd. They wouldn't do that. I think what they would do is they would just tone it down. Like, maybe Zato just isn't a puppet character anymore, or maybe he is a puppet character, but the Eddie gauge depletes way quicker. I'm not sure how they would do that, but either way, I think it's pretty clear that this game is being toned down compared to the previous titles. Despite that, I personally am still really excited for the game. It just looks fun to play to me. It looks pretty. It still looks fast. It still looks like Guilty Gear in terms of the neutral game, roaming, canceling, and I'm excited to see what they do with it. I think that if people give good feedback for the game after playing it, I think the fact that they're even willing to implement that is great, first of all. But I think that if people give good feedback, that it still has the potential of satisfying a lot of people that are really, really upset. The reason why I think this is because with every new fighting game, almost every single time without fail, people who had played the previous version primarily almost always hate the new version. Like, it almost always happens. Street Fighter 4 was when I got into the fighting game community, and so while I did play Street Fighter 3 as a kid, I wasn't in the competitive scene. But I had heard that when Street Fighter 4 came out, a lot of Street Fighter 3 players said this game like sucked. It was ugly, they didn't like the way it looked, they hated that it was going 3D. I can't really blame them, because vanilla Street Fighter 4 was busted, that game was broken, but then that game ended up getting worshipped. And then Street Fighter 5 came out, and I don't like Street Fighter 5 to this day. I don't. I mean, I can have fun with it and I can play it, but I'm not a huge fan of it, and I honestly hated it when it first came out. I remember when Marvel vs. Capcom 3 came out, and I remember Justin Wong put out a Facebook status saying this game is trash. Like, he literally was ripping this game apart. I remember Sanford Kelly went on a huge rant. I'm pretty sure it was Sanford Kelly. Went on a huge rant about how awful this game was and how Level 3 X Factor made the game garbage. It was super scrubby. Anybody could play it, right? And then that game ended up getting worshipped. When Guilty Gear Xrd first came out, everybody who played the previous Guilty Gears said the same thing about this one. It toned a lot of things down. It took away moves from characters, right? People said the same thing. I even heard that some people were saying, a lot of people say, you know, I just recently got into Tekken, right? But I hear a lot of people say that Tekken 7 is easier. I've heard that from everyone. And that game's getting worshipped, right? So it's like with every new title, there's usually going to be a pretty large group of people that are quick to jump down the game's throat, because they want it to be the same, because they already love it. That, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But I mean, companies got to make money, they got to make a sequel, and it is what it is. So I think this is just a normal part of the process. Unfortunately, I won't be at Arc Revo, so I won't get my hands on the game, but I definitely want to get my hands on a closed beta as soon as possible, keeping my eye on every little piece of gameplay of it as I can, and I'll be doing as much coverage of it, keeping you guys in the loop on my thoughts and opinions on it. Let me know what you guys think about the new Guilty Gear 2020. Are you disappointed? Are you excited? Are you nervous? Probably all three, but be specific down below, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.
Yeah, you got it all. If you ask me, yeah, that's all